Welcome to the Tourpreneur podcast. Travel industry veteran Shane Whaley will take you on a journey with fellow tourpreneurs, sharing their tips, ideas, insights, and success stories to inspire you to make your tour business the best it can be. And now, here is your host, Shane Whaley.
Hello and welcome to episode 108 of the Tourpreneur podcast. I've often said on the show that one of the things I love about our industry is just the sheer breadth of it. Everything from kayak tours to food tours to walking tours to architecture tours, etc. And today's guest is offering something a little bit different. Now, today we're going to learn how Matthew Smith's passion to share vitally important life skills and the history of the SOE's epic operations. All right. So basically the SOE, Special Operations Executive, very active during World War II, basically sabotage behind enemy lines. Now, you may not be someone who's into military history or adventure or endurance or survival. I get that. But I would urge you to stick with today's episode because you're going to learn how a very experienced military man has this idea of wanting to take people on 7-day plus excursions to experience what it was like to go behind enemy lines and to bring many of us out of our comfortable lives and experience what it's like to be in some of these rough terrains. And in this conversation, we're joined by Peter Syme. Many of you know Peter, very, very experienced when it comes to tours and being a tourpreneur. And we run the rule of Matt's business idea, SOEExpeditions.com, which the website is available now. They're taking bookings now. The first tours will launch next year. We talk about how he is set up, how is he going to market this, because it's a very specific demographic. It's niche. We talk about the buyer's journey and lots of other stuff. And I'm just thrilled because Matt Smith, he joined the military in 1994. He's passed airborne parachute selection, Army commando selection, followed by 6 years with Special Forces. So I don't want to fight this guy and I don't want to go drinking with him with this kind of background, right? Seriously though, but I love that he's taking that experience from being in the military and he wants to build experiences around that, okay? His website is SOE Expeditions.com. Settle back and enjoy this conversation with Peter Syme, Matt Smith, and myself. Welcome to Tourpreneur episode 108, Matthew Smith and Peter Syme. How are you, gentlemen?
Good. I'm good, mate. Nice to be here. Thanks.
Hi, Shane. I'm all good.
Fantastic. You've been working 18-hour days, right, Peter, out in ground operations?
Yeah, I'm back to being an operator as in doing the operations rather than talking nonsense and all the other stuff I do. So now I'm back to driving, taking photographs, guiding, washing, basically dog's body of anything that needs done.
Yeah. What's the reaction been like from your guests, from people booking your tours?
I'd say 80 to 90% are not even mentioning anything to do with COVID. They're just desperate to get out and do stuff. And you've got to mind what we do. We're all adventurous type product. Therefore, the people who do it tend to be fairly adventurous. And then we have about maybe 5 to 10% that are asking some questions around procedures, safety, health from a COVID situation. But it's a lot less than what I was expecting it to be.
Cool. Well, we've invited on the show today Matthew Smith, who is the top man at SOE Expeditions. Really excited to hear about your story. So for those who aren't familiar with your company, what exactly do you do? What do you offer?
So SOE Expeditions has been a brainchild for a couple of years now. It's been in the back burner and it hasn't really come to fruition till now. So for the past 8 years, every year I've been going to Norway. And I've been guiding and leading on the Heroes of Telemark over the Hardangervidda. And that's following the footsteps of the saboteurs who blew up the heavy water factory in Norway. And that was one of the most successful sabotage missions of World War II. From about 2008, I was lucky enough to meet some of the saboteurs and they were still alive. Joachim Ronneberg, when he passed away, I think it was just January last year, he was 99. A guy was an absolute legend. And so all these guys were legends, and some of the stuff they were doing was just, they made movies about it. And they're a dying breed, so I'd always wanted to do more of it. And I actually chatted to Pete about it. And he's like, you should make it into remember I had that chat, Pete, he says, make it into a race or something like that. That was never really that event you couldn't really do as a race on high numbers because it would dilute the product of it being, being true and authentic to what they'd done. So that's always been a thing that, companies do that. I've been lucky to partner with Brian Desmond, who's ex-military, and he's been doing that for a lot longer than me. And, after building that trust with him, he's, allowed me to utilise his expertise and his contacts, because in Norway, you can go and do it, but you'll be living in tents as opposed to living in the huts that the saboteurs lived in, and it's all family communes, and, you've got to know the right people. So finally, after nearly 10 years, he's given me the green light, so that's good. So I've that's the flagship event. But then I sat down with Mark Beaumont, who is obviously an endurance athlete, been around the world twice on a bike in under 80 days. It's quite special. So the whole SOE is basically a lot of these men and women were civilians who done extraordinary things from an endurance and a kind of survival. And then I was thinking about, well, there's so many other areas of operations they worked in, i.e. Pyrenees, Crete, Italy, and so how do we bring this all together? So I sat down and I started looking at them, and there's lots and lots, but it had to be the right ones that tied in with, I'm all about the kind of the adventure and the survival side, and he's about the endurance side, and it's bringing that concept together. And I think people really they want that. And it's hopefully it's going to work.
There was a show on TV I watched on Netflix. It was called Churchill's Secret Agents, where they took a group of civilians and trained them to be SOE. And I actually quite liked it, because most reality stuff, it's all dramatized and people fighting each other. But this was actually pretty good. And what I liked about it is they weaved in a lot of history around the SOE and what those agents actually did. And I just watched that show and I had tremendous respect for all those SOE agents. I mean, to go through what they did, and that they were civilians and, they opted into this. Just an incredible bit of history that I feel, we weren't really taught that at school, to be honest.
No. And that the education piece is massive. So, being Scottish, SOE and Special Forces, they all trained all in and around this area up in Scotland. Actually, where I live, just down the road in Ayrshire, there was an SAS camp that I found. I didn't know about that. So, and it's stuff like I live here, and there's stuff people don't know about that I'm just finding out. And so I think, that's really important, passing that on to, future generations. We're based at a Culti-Bragan camp, which is an old German World War II camp. And again, that's got its own history. And then just up the road, you got Aviemore, where the Marines trained, and SOE trained all over the place. Interestingly, I watched that program. It was really good. It was well done.
Yeah, I was pleased with that.
You've got in mind that people's perception of the military today versus what it was like in World War II when SOE was working. I can normally spot an ex-military person instantly at the moment because they carry themselves a certain way, they talk a certain way, and you can just spot them. If I can spot them, so can other folks spot them, and that's not a good thing. Whereas Churchill recognised that if he wanted people to blend in, they had to be unique individuals. And these unique individuals could be actors, they could be poets, they could be doctors, they could be anything basically but military. And the other skills, when you're in a survival situation like that, when it's literally do or die, it's amazing how quickly people learn the other things they need to learn if they can just blend in using their skills. And if you're an actor and a creative person, someone in the creative areas, on the whole, they blend in better than some hairy military guy.
That leads me to ask you a question there, Matt. So who is your ideal customer? Who's booking your tours, your experiences? Is it ex-military types? Is it adventure types? Or is it a wide range of people?
It's a real wide range of people. I mean, I've done 22 years in the military. So for me, military guys are great. They're you know what you're getting. They rock up on time. They're generally all fit guys. And they'll just book en masse because, they can't be bothered jumping through the hoops of red tape. So I've just given them a product off the shelf and they book it, and that's great, But at the moment, it's a new baby. It's just launched. And so we're finding like the kind of high-end, directors, the guys that are looking after themselves, they want to challenge yourself a little bit. It's got almost bragging rights in the office on a Monday morning. And it's a cool thing to do. So, but again, another massive market is, the women's market, females who are just, they're up there as well, and they want to do the exact same thing. It's why do the guys get all the fun? And I get a lot of that. And I'm like, yeah, why not? SOE had lots of women, and the first allied person behind enemy lines was a female SOE agent who started infiltrating the Germans before D-Day. Mm-hmm. So it's So to answer your question, military's great, but it's normally kind of people who want to challenge themselves, and so you've normally find it's a kind of older generation, or people who've got a fascination in history and like the adventure expedition kind of out their comfort zone a wee bit, because it's not all. Well, you'll know this with your 1,000-mile expeditions. It's can be quite punchy at times, and the weather. If you don't know what you're doing up there, you're going to suffer.
What's great about this, Shane, is for operators who are listening, or new operators, or people looking to open up, what Matt and his team done here is a great demonstration of designing something that's unique and different, and not just looking at yet another tour operator doing exactly what's already out there, multiplied by 50 or 60 or 70, or in some cases, literally hundreds of operators all competing over the same thing. He's looked at the market, he's looked at what people really want to do, and I would suggest that's been emphasised in this period we're in at the moment with COVID, and can come up with a unique, different product that ties up history, culture, fitness, endurance, and it's different. It really is different. There's probably nothing like it elsewhere in the world. So when you come up with a product like that matches the psychology of need that people have, and you come up with a really good quality product, and I have no doubt this will be quality product, then it's just a marketing job behind it, and you're going to have success. I have absolutely no doubt this business will be a success, and it's it's a shareable experience. So when people do this, they're going to talk about it. They're not going to go back to their office on the Monday and keep their mouth shut. They're not going to keep their mouth shut on social media. They're going to share the experience they had. Therefore, it comes with an inbuilt flywheel of remarketing, because it's an experience that people will talk about and remember for quite a long time, if not for life.
Fancy coming on a course, mate, do you?
No.
Fancy coming on one?
No, I'm too old.
But you like the look of the Crete one, Peter.
I do like it. I keep meaning to go and, I was going to say run across Crete, but those days are long, long gone. I keep meaning to go to Crete and walk across the White Mountains, because I have done my background on what happened there and during the Second World War. So that is one I would like to go on, the Crete one. But
no, it's interesting.
My body's falling apart, man.
I know, but I remember you said to me once, it actually keeps you fit, because you're back out on the ground, and these are the things that keep you going, because you love it. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Do what you love. But when you were talking about the unique aspect, I mean, being in the military, a big part of that was going on battlefield tours, and it's literally, get on a coach or a bus and you get off, and you wake up hungover at a beach somewhere, and a guy's chatting to you about what happened, and then you get back on the bus and you go, and there's no real, okay, it's informative and it's educational, but there's nothing there behind it substantial that's taking you to your comfort zone. So not only does these trips give you that, but we're trying to, we have with most of them, is tied in with someone who is either a relative or a descendant of some of the famous people that are on the ground. Like, so for Italy, you've got Major Gordon Lett, who was the SOE guy on the ground who had up to 400 partisans who punched a hole through the Gothic line, and the Allies could never do that. They kept getting repulsed. Churchill called it the soft underbelly of Europe, but it was far from that. The Germans had their toughest mountain troops up across that whole area. So Major Gordon Lett asked for a spearhead, and he got 33 SAS guys flew in. So between them and the SAS major, they basically punched through. They caused havoc within that area. Now, through our research, I've found Brian Lett, Major Gordon Lett's son, and he's going to come on that exped, and he's going to tell about his father's exploits at the start and the beginning and stuff like that. It's like, that's mental. It's like, I think that really adds to it. So if the trips that we're doing, we're trying to find that kind of unique, whether it's an author or a historian. We've tied in with a few historians as well who have written books on it, and it sells herself. So I think that's quite interesting as well. It's a unique selling point.
And that's why I'm going to share this. I do another podcast called Spybrary, which is about spy books.
Okay.
We were actually just featured in Radio Times last week, which was very nice. We do fiction and non-fiction. So there's a lot of people who are interested in the SOE who listen to our Spybrary show. So
yeah. Have you done anything with Damien Lewis, who's keen to come on board? He's done quite a few books on SOE.
Yes, he has. No, absolutely. No, that's one that we definitely recommend. How do you go about, because, this is a certain type of person, right? This is not the walking tour in a city, bike tour. This is a certain kind of person. How are you going about marketing to that segment?
Yeah, that's a really good one, isn't it? I mean, it's quite niche. So I've found at the moment, because we've just started doing it, I'm relying on what I've done previous. So my old videos on Heroes of Telemark and, other people sell it. So, when Mark Beaumont, he's got a massive following, so his audience is a bit bigger than mine, so that's good. That's going to give us some traction. I find LinkedIn really powerful. Like, I've just made a couple of vids, and he's made a couple of vids, and it's so straight away you're tapping out that market of people who are either CEOs or in a high-end job, whatever, and they're like, yeah, I fancy doing something different, and I find that powerful. And then I suppose it's like any new venture; it takes time, doesn't it? You got to market it, you got to grow it, and it's whether I'm going to events, so we're all going to events, and then it's word of mouth, and then it's targeted ads, and I don't really know if kind of OTAs would work with that because it's so bespoke. I don't know. What's your thoughts, Pete? I'm keen to get your ideas on this.
No, for this sort of product, it's a similar product to my expedition business that I did have until COVID trashed this whole year. But we'll get back to it. I don't actually think it is niche. The product you're delivering and the experience you're delivering is niche, but the market isn't that niche because your market is... The psychology of customer going on this is a desire to do something that's different. So how many people are out there who have a desire to do something that's different? Literally millions. And as the world becomes more and more same, and everybody goes to McDonald's and Starbucks and blah, blah, they want to do something different. So there's a huge desire out there. They look for something that's different. So something that's novel, again, the novelty we value. Now, I don't mean that disrespectively to the actual product, because obviously it's about history and people that die doing this stuff. But it is novel. It is so different. It is a completely different product in the travel space. So if you've got desire and people are looking for novel product or experiences en masse, and then you add in a bit of fear and a bit of challenge, that market's no niche. That market is literally millions of people. So it's aligning your experiences in your product, understanding the psychology of the customers that have the desire, they're looking for something that's different, and they really like it if it's a bit of a challenge and it's going to scare them a wee bit. And you don't need to break them, but if it scares them a wee bit, it's all the better. People are not challenged in today's life anymore, and life has become too easy for so many people. And I know we're going through a bad time at the moment. Businesses are upside down and all the rest of it, but the reality is people are not really challenged these days. And if you set up an experience where they feel challenged and are genuinely challenged, you've got a customer for life.
Yeah, I've found that as well through all the trips I've done and the experiences. It's only when you're really uncomfortable, you won't enjoy it at the time, but you'll look back and you'll go, do you know what? I got something for that. That was... You take the golden nuggets away, don't you?
Yeah. It's... in the endurance part of it, your partners, if I go back to my own thing, when I designed 1,000-mile journeys, my thought process was, I know the desire's out there for people to do extraordinary challenges, but they don't feel able to. They want to, it's in their head, but they don't feel able to. And the reason they don't feel able to is because when they look at the media and they look at the films, and it's all rock stars and superb athletes and people doing things that are just out of the conception of the normal person, or they need a high level of technical skill. So you have to get over them barriers that there's massive desire, but then for many people, the next reaction is, but I couldn't possibly do that. And that's a barrier you've got to get over. So when I was designing the expeditions, I went, well, can you walk? And they were saying, what do you mean, can I walk? I said, well, can you put one foot in front of the other? Of course I can walk. Well, then you can walk 1,000 miles. again, and stop bloody arguing about it. Get signed up, give me your money, and we'll go. And it's as simple as that. But if you show them a video of somebody falling off a rock face and clinging on with his fingernails, they're not going to sign up because they have to do 5 years of training to get to that level to be able to do it. So it's a case of making sure the clients are going to be challenged physically, mentally, and have a bit of fear in there. But you've also got to get across it is achievable for the person who has the desire and the want to do something different in life. And just ordinary people in ordinary jobs and ordinary life are capable of much, much, much more than they realise. And it's your job and my job and other folk like us to make sure we put them in that position because they won't regret it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I've got a good theory on that where it's almost like a swap in kind of like generations and how it's happened. I mean, when I was a wee boy growing up, we were wee boys growing up. I don't know, Shane, maybe you didn't do this, I don't know, but running about and climbing trees and being outdoorsy, it was just it was a way of life. So as I get older, my kids grow up, I probably will do more of that. But our parents wanted to go on a cruise ship and chill out on a beach, because they've done all that. Whereas now folk coming up, they're maybe not doing as much of that because there's so much technology. So now they're getting to a time in their life, they're a wee bit older, they're looking after themselves, maybe get a wee bit more expendable cash. And like, do you know what? I don't want to go on a boat and sit on a beach. I want to do something punchy. I want to do something. It's all about the experiential side, which I know you've chatted at length about this, Pete. But and I think there's a real change, and I think there's going to be more and more of that, and I think that's exciting.
Yeah, when these punters turn up for your, I call them punters, that's terrible, customers, guests, when they turn up for your experiences, get the phones off them, take the bloody phones off them, hide them away. And one thing we started doing, and I'm going to really ramp this up once I get back to doing whatever we're going to do in the future, is we hire a lot of photographers, and I'm going to say to the clients, particularly in expeditions, you're just not doing photography in expeditions. There'll be a pro photographer coming along, taking the photographs, and you'll have complete access to all the photographs everywhere. But people, if they're so focused on social media and taking snapshots and taking selfies and all the other stuff that goes on and uploading, they're not actually experiencing what they're there to experience. And that I increasingly see, even in some of the remote places of the world where I'm traipsing around, just because the sun comes up at a certain bit or sets at a certain bit, and you suddenly have all these thousands of people with, I'm going to try and get people away from that. And the way they still, and of course, these things tend to be a once or a twice in a lifetime experience. Therefore, you want them to have memories. Therefore, you want them to have media and photography. But let's do it better than just a lot of people with bloody phones on sticks.
Yeah, no, 100%. I totally agree with that. We were on the Videoware group. The Hardangervidda is the highest plateau in Europe, and we're in this hut, and lo and behold, they got a signal. I don't know how they done it, but they got a signal. And so we're in a remote little hut, and the wood burning stove's going, and you maybe got a wee bottle of something, and you're having a few drams and it's good chat, and then all of a sudden, boop boop, and everyone's it's like, oh, that just goes out the window, and everyone's just engrossed in their phone, and it just kills it, and it's like you lose the memory and the experience,
I think it's very difficult for people to have a digital detox these days. Especially, for us running online businesses, I try one day a week. I try not to have my phone or be on my phone, and I fail at that most weeks. But I feel better when I do, when I have that time away from Facebook and email and everything else, and I go and walk in the Vermont hills here. And I think going on something like your experience was like, yeah, you can't use your phone for 7 days. If that puts people off, then they're not the right kind of person, or they're not in the right mindset to come on an experience like that. But I think that's part of the attraction. It would be for me to go, wow, I'm not going to be on my phone for a week. I need that. It's hard.
You enjoy the experience more, and it's. I think there needs to be more of it.
As Peter said earlier on, you've created something that's unique. So you have the challenge of coming up with pricing the tours, and you can't just go and look at someone else and say they're offering that, we'll offer this. How did you go about pricing up your expeditions?
Yeah, that's a good one as well. So, there is some companies out there doing similar trips, but they won't have the experience or the historian there or someone behind it to give it substance. Yeah, all these guys who are delivering it are mega experienced guys, but it's that kind of unique selling point. So, and also having, endurance athlete, a world endurance athlete, no one's been around the world twice on a bike. So that endurance part that Mark Bulmer, Mark's actually coming to Norway. So to get Mark out for a day isn't cheap. So, to bring these people on board who want to go, actually, I want to experience all that. Plus, I bet you Mark's got some good stories, and he's got a lot of good stories. And so you get to that, that piece as well, and sharing in those memories and learning about his experiences. And you normally find when you're in an environment like that, people's energy experiences rub off on you, and you come away going, do you know what? And sometimes it can be life changing, and then it sends you off to do something bigger and better. And again, when you're working in those, and it took me a long time to get it, it's knowing your worth and knowing your product and knowing, right, do you know what? This is what we're worth, so this is what we're going to sell it at. And the reason we're charging that price is because you're going to get an awesome product, and no one else is doing it. So, hope that answers your question, mate.
It's a challenge for everyone creating unique experiences. One of the biggest questions I get here at Tourpreneur is, how do I price my tours? Because, no one's handing you a book on it.
Well, I've only been doing this for like 8 years now, and I'm still learning. But I think you really got to believe in yourself, believe in your product, and if you're the only one doing it, like Pete said, there's thousands of people out there doing run-of-the-mill stuff, and it's really good stuff. But if you're one guy that's doing it different, then obviously you need to put a premium on that. So I think, I don't see a problem with that.
As you know, Shane, from speaking to all the operators, we're all guilty. I'm guilty of this. We're all guilty of underpricing the value of what we do. And whether you're running a food tour, a walking tour, or an activity outfit, or a multi-day expedition business, we're all guilty of underpricing what we do, because we tend to, because of the digital world, we just go online, look at the price of everything, and think, I must price at that point. Now, Matt didn't have the chance to do that because there wasn't much out there. It was the same way what he was doing. So he had to actually go through the thought process of, this is the product, this is the value, this is what we're bringing to the value. What is that worth? So when you take it from that point of view, you come up with a more accurate price. Whereas as you know, thousands of operators have just compared to what's on the market and then come up with the same price of 10% below or 10% above without actually thinking the value it's been delivered. But when you look at the experiences the clients get from this industry with what they're doing and what they pay for it, compared with what they pay for other things in other industries, we're vastly undervaluing the business. Vastly, all of us. And I'm guilty. I sell stuff for 50 quid and $50, $50. And people rave about it for years. And then it's a half-day tour, but it really makes a difference in them. And we're giving it away for $50. We're all guilty of it. So Matt's gone through the right process. This is a unique product. He knows who his customer persona is. He knows who he's targeting, the type of customer he's doing. And he knows the sort of spending budget that customer's got. And then you price your product to that. And obviously you have to deliver the value. The last thing you can do is take the product out, deliver it, and the customer doesn't think they had fair value.
Yeah, and we have delivered some in the past. Well, we've delivered lots in the past. And we will say to the client at the end, what do you think that was worth? And some of them say you need to put it up. You know what I mean? So and some are like, oh, you're on the money, and that's great. So it's finding that balance, because everyone's circumstances are different. But I think you got to hit the nail on the head with getting that right and the right amount of value, because that's ultimately what the client want. They want value for money. So, yeah.
There's data out there and research for folk brighter than me from universities and stuff around pricing. In particular, if we go back to day tours, Sean, there's about, normally when you look at the data, there's normally about a 13 to 17% swing that you can manipulate your pricing. If you're in a competitive market with other like-priced products on similar platforms, there's normally between 13 and 17% you can manipulate in there. And then if you split test it and measure it and all the rest of it, you will may get a slight drop-off of bookings. But then when you crunch the numbers, you're making more profit. If you've gone up higher, that's 13 to 17%. The drop-off in bookings are minimal, but it drops through significantly more profit. And that's obviously I've taken all things as even, that your reviews are good, your reputation's good, the product's good, etc., etc. There is room for all of us to manipulate pricing up a bit, but I totally understand, having spoke to hundreds of operators over the last couple of months in COVID, that so many of them just focus on the operator who's doing the same tour as them next door, and they complain about £1 or £2 difference or $1 or $2 difference, which I just don't get that.
Did you know every weekday Shane curates the most interesting news articles in tours and activities and sends them out in a snappy daily digest? Grab your copy of the Tourpreneur Daily Briefing at www.tourpreneur.com.
So I notice on the website there's no pricing. It's contact us, which I get because it's a high ticket item. But have you felt that maybe you should put the pricing on there? Because how do you repel people who'll be surprised by the cost?
We want somebody that's going to make a bit of an effort to actually inquire, and then they're sincere about it then. And and they're not that way off the mark, really. Do you know what I mean? For what you're getting there, pretty reasonably priced. I mean, they're all inclusive, a week to 10-day trips. So, okay, the Heroes of Telemark's a bit more punchy because it's a 10-day and there's a lot of safety cover required on that. The Hurd can be, brutal in February. And it's a lot of these dates are anniversary dates as well, which is quite hard to get because they're busy times, So, what we're on now, it's like, okay, 70, there's a lot of 80th anniversaries coming up for these ops, so there's going to be a lot of interest. People go, and what you find is with these trips, people come together who are like, oh, my granddad was on that op, but we didn't find out until after the war or something, and then there's pieces of the story start getting brought together. It makes it interesting. So, to answer your question, I probably will put the price on later on, but because it's such a new baby, she's kind of still firming it up and getting it right. And then, I mean, to be honest, you just send us an email and we'll send you a price. It's not any great hardship,
Customer today, because they've not got the financial wherewithal at the moment, is if I still want them inquiries, even if they can't afford it, because they can become a customer 3, 4, 5 years down the line. I regularly get expedition customers who have been following our stuff for 5, 6 years. And then they're just in the position, time-wise, money-wise, it's just the right time. Whereas for the other 4 or 5 years, it wasn't the right time. So never undervalue any potential customer because things in life change. And let's look at it the other way around. I was always pre-COVID thinking, right, this customer can't afford what we're doing at the moment, but I'm going to stay in contact, etc., because they can, hopefully in life, progress to one of my expeditions. Now, with COVID, I'm actually doing the opposite. And we've stopped doing 10-week expeditions because not many people are going to take 10 weeks out in this climate. And I'm designing cheaper expeditions that are only 1 week long. We've never done 1 week expeditions. We're designing 1 week ones to fit with the marketplace as we see it at the moment. So we're actually going down market price-wise and obviously removing a lot of value because you've got rid of 9 weeks in many cases. But you have to always be doing what the market needs and can do, not what you necessarily want to do in this particular time of rapid changing. And hopefully we all get back to being able to do exactly what we want to do. But at the moment, the market is giving us strong signals of what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do.
Peter, with your vast experience, what social media channel do you think would be best for Matt's business?
LinkedIn for a certain type of customer and group, or access to one potential customer that then leads to filling the whole expedition, because that could be a corporate director, a managing director, CEO, etc. So LinkedIn for sure, with the chance of filling that trip just with one group. Facebook would work tremendously well for individuals and couples, twos, but probably not going to hit the guy that is then going to come along with 8 people and fill the trip or whatever. So both of them two work hand in hand if you just understand that it's not always different people, because you've got so many people have got a Facebook profile and a LinkedIn profile, but they operate on these platforms differently. Therefore, both of them two platforms you can fill expeditions for. I find it much easier to fill expensive trips on Facebook and things costing 10k plus 15k than I do selling a 50 quid trip. It's much easier to sell more expensive stuff than it is cheaper stuff. It's just the nature of the way the thing works. So both of them platforms I would see as routes to this. You've got to mind this is based on fact and history. Therefore, again, it's a story. Anything that was a story gathers interest. And if it's factual stories, real live and this happened stories, people are going to watch that stuff if you put the right media up for them. on the social networks, they're going to watch it, they're going to get engaged by it if they've got that bent, and then it's a pretty easy to convert them once they've got the general interest.
What's your thoughts on Instagram? I know it's a younger demographic, but just thinking of the visuals of it.
The visuals work. I've never nailed Instagram because we have something like 50,000 followers on it, but I've still never nailed it because we just haven't got the resources, and we certainly haven't got the resources at the moment. I've always taken the view with all these social channels, find one or two that works for you. And we operate across them all, but we use Instagram and Twitter and stuff for an awareness channel, not necessarily a commerce channel, because I haven't had the time to nail them from commerce. So we use them as awareness, but we use the ones that we really understand from a commerce perspective. I can turn customers from LinkedIn and Facebook into money, whereas I haven't gone through the process of learning that. I've always treated all social media for the last 15 years exactly the same. Build an audience, don't expect nothing. Build an audience, don't expect nothing. At some point, once you have an audience, go and learn about that audience, go and learn about the customers, and then figure out how you're going to make money from it. But that process where you go and learn is quite time consuming in the extreme. And I just haven't got into learning. I know other people are doing brilliant on Instagram, so a product like this theoretically should. I just don't know how to do it because I haven't got my arse in gear to go and figure out Instagram in detail.
Yeah, I keep hearing good things about Instagram stories. I'm on there, but I don't really get it. I haven't even invested the time. And that's why I wonder if maybe the demographic isn't on there for this kind of experience.
Yeah, I'm keen to go down that road and delve into it a bit deeper. I mean, like I said, we're on there, and we're putting on just a couple of Exped just now because that's the most recent, and we don't want to go too much old hat. LinkedIn, if guys jumped on there and says, send us the dates, I'm going to fill it. I'm going to fill it with a group. You're like, great. But our numbers aren't, you're looking between maximum 8, 12 people. So, they're very small, kind of exclusive groups. But yeah, Facebook's obviously great, but Instagram's one of those ones that I think people just like visuals. I'm a visual person as well. I just like to see something, and if I like it, follow it a bit more, and then hopefully go down the rabbit hole a wee bit more and hopefully book.
I've started using Instagram more because you're right. It's just photographs. It's not people are writing crap or politics or whatever, right? You're just looking at pictures.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy, Yeah.
With all these things, though, there's no rocket science behind all this. You just need an audience. You have to build an audience, and you can't be in a rush. It's a long journey, and so many people are, because we've been trained in a certain way. Google, if you get your SEO right, you get clicks and you get bookings. You do PPC. PPC leads to bookings very quickly. You spend some money, you get bookings. Whereas social isn't the same. Social's a long, long journey, and it's a different way you communicate. People on social are there to be social, not to be sold to. So it's a much longer thing, but that's not to underestimate it. No. It is incredibly powerful once you, at the moment, coming out of COVID, our social inquiries and bookings are far outstripping our Google inquiries and bookings. Now, pre-COVID, it was the other way around. Google was always the dominant. Social was climbing, but Google was dominant. In this world at the moment, we are getting much more success on social than we are Google, because the search volume hasn't returned to Google in the same volume it was pre-COVID. But people haven't stopped becoming social because of COVID. They've become more social online. They're spending more time on Facebook, more time on other social. So it's easier to reach them on there at the moment than it is to via Google.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to chat with you in a year or so's time, Matt, and find out what was successful for you.
Yeah, I mean, I was just chatting to Pete there before this. It was like, oh no, I've maybe bit off a bit more I can chew, because there's so many of them. The more I research it, in the moment I've got about 12, and I've only advertised 4, but these are really punchy Exped that you can be done twice a year. So straight away I'm up into 20 Exped. Like, so these are like specific either SOE or Special Forces. But one that I've got on there, which isn't SOE or Special Forces, well, he is. He's the godfather, the forefather of all of it, was Lawrence of Arabia, who ended up developing the Long Range Desert Group, where they ended up helping the Special Forces in North Africa, but he was a real pioneer of it all. And I think, wow, that'd be cool. So I've already looked into that. Pete, I think you do Jordan already. Do you not? Have you do a trip to Jordan?
Previous disaster, I was in the process of setting up a business in Jordan.
Okay.
just as the Syrian war kicked off.
All right. Right.
So we had to do a rapid extraction from there.
Right.
All the cheap flights we were relying on to get customers coming in suddenly pulled out. So wrong place, wrong time. But yeah, Jordan's stunning, and the expeditions in Jordan are brilliant, and the people are great. Absolutely fantastic. It's right location to do it. That would be a great trip. Lawrence of Arabia would be a great trip.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, there's folk doing it, but it's like, I've got ideas of making it a bit more punchy, and even like Libya. Now Libya's a no-go area, but I've had people get in touch like, listen, we're consultancy agents in Libya, we'll get you out to Libya to do the stuff, the Egypt kind of long-range desert group stuff. And I'm thinking, wow, that's amazing. But and then there's that element of kind of like punchiness to it. It's a wee bit risky, but a lot of those World War II long-range desert group missions, they were right out in the borders, right in the sticks and in the desert. So I was thinking, if you could recreate that with the actual old Jeeps, the old pinky Jeeps and stuff like that they'd done, that would be a proper special exped. Yeah, maybe that's for later on. Let's get our foundation strong first before we start heading off into the desert with Jeeps.
It does raise an interesting question, though. How do you deal with insurance and liability on your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, for Europe, it's all right. I mean, there's companies out there in insuring in Europe. When you start going into kind of North Africa, I'm saying Libya, we're not going to go there anytime soon because, you're not allowed to. So, having your right public liability, having your instructors swept up and your guides. I mean, looking into it more, just going up into the mountains, the Apennines in Italy, your guides need to be properly ticketed with the Italian, not just international mountain leaders, but they need to have the Italian tickets. And so again, that kind of limits what guys you can use. So, I've got experience. I've got Herzbergführer mountain guys who are ex-military special forces guys, but they necessarily wouldn't be qualified to run stuff over there. So it's about getting those ticks in the right box and just doing a bit of research. And yeah, a lot of the trips, like there's a couple of good ones. Switzerland, the kind of Mount Blanc area. There's some cool stuff over there, and then you guys can finish off with a heli ski or something kind of high end. But again, you can't heli ski in France. You can only do it on the Swiss side or the Italian side. So it's about finding out all these kind of stuff that's tripping you up, and just make sure you're bomb proof before you set off. But yeah, safety's massive. Safety's massive, Shane.
Yeah.
The insurance on multi-day, Shane, is there's two. You double bag it. You have to have your own business insurance. And to be honest, in Europe, it's pretty easy to get. Certainly, our insurance covers every country in the world, with the exception of the US of A. I can't take clients to the US of A. I just can't get insurance that is economical to take clients on a trip in the USA. But everywhere else, doesn't matter where it is, I can take people into Iran, take people into Iraq, Afghanistan. Insurance is pretty easy to get that. But it's always worth double bagging off your own corporate insurance. And then, not just worth, we insist on it. Every single client has to take out their own, not travel insurance, but rescue insurance. And there's a distinct difference. Travel insurance is fairly cheap, although the prices have gone up substantially since COVID. Rescue insurance is higher priced, and it always will be. But normally, depending on the trip, but 9 times out of 10, we'll insist on rescue insurance before we take any money off the client. They have to prove, and we're not allowed to actually tell them who to insure with. It's a bit strange, but there you go. We can give them a range of companies to insure with, and then they can insure with one of them. And as long as we get a policy, then we're happy to take a client. But you need to double bag this stuff because the insurance, as we've all found during this period, it's a minefield, absolute minefield. And it's only when it gets called into action do you find out how much of a minefield it is.
Yeah, there's one that tripped me up, not in the current business, but it was in the military. And we were going up to Cal. In fact, we were going up all 3 of the highest peaks in Morocco. And I had a military medic with me, and I had a sat phone. And we done the risk assessment, and then my commanding officer went, so what happens if your sat phone breaks? I goes, oh, sorry, I've got my medic. He goes, what happens if you lose your medic? I was like, I'm not going to lose my medic. I'm not going to lose my medic. Well, just come up with a plan in case. So we had the Moroccan army with us, and they had a medic. So sure enough, we get the green light, and we go to Morocco, and my medic, he steps on some glass and cuts his feet, and he gets septicemia, blood poisoning, and he's got this mountain, and he's man down, and he's like, oh. We had to get him backed off. So it was actually the Moroccan medic who patched him up, and then we had to bring in the Moroccan army to get him extracted and what have. And it just shows you, you can plan for every eventuality, but if you've not got stuff in place, then you can get caught out. So that was a good learning curve. Always have backup for backups. You really know that anyway, Pete.
Yeah. Although, again, in some ways, I mean, this is just me being old and grumpy. Things have just become so safe now, and you have to do this. The real years ago when I started doing expeditions in the 80s, I was still in the military at that time, but when we got time off, and we used to get lots of time off then, you just turn up and go on an expedition and do it. And whether it was Nepal or wherever, and you didn't worry about communications or sat phones, you just went and done it. And there's something really enjoyable about just buggering off and doing stuff without worrying about all this stuff. But obviously, if you're taking paying guests, you can't do that, and you have to go through so many hoops these days. Correctly, it's the guest safety it's at heart, but I do feel that whole stuff is taking something away from it, and things are becoming super safe that they then become like attractions or become like managed experiences. And when we get onto that, it's a bugbear in mind. What is an expedition? I hate the word expedition, not because I don't like expeditions. It's because everybody treats that word in a certain different way. And the travel industry is terrible for it. So if you look how many people are selling expeditions, there's literally thousands. But they range from luxury small cruises where you're on 5-star top-end chef service with waiters to one of Mart's in the snow with howling winds at 100 mile an hour and frostbite, or me trips people 1,000 miles across a desert. And expedition word gets used for a lot of things, and it fools people, because I get people inquiring for hours and they say, "Oh, I've been on X expeditions," and I say, "Well, tell me the expeditions you've been on." They haven't been on expeditions; they've been on adventure holidays. And adventure holidays are very different from expeditions. Adventure holidays are repeated time and time again, often week in, week out. So it's just a system. It's an itinerary thing. People ask for my itinerary in an expedition. I say, you're not getting an itinerary. We don't do itineraries. We start there, and if we all survive, we finish at the other end, and we make it up as we go along. And they think you're daft, but if they want an experience, that's what you're going to get. If I give them an itinerary, I've just took away half the experience. And then they're going to come back and hold the itinerary up and say, we didn't do this on the itinerary.
Yeah.
It's the word expedition is overused in so many wrong contexts that it makes for operators who are doing expeditions, it makes it difficult to understand what your client thinks it is. Therefore, you have to ask that question. What do you think an expedition is?
So just to piggyback on that, so when I see SOE Expeditions, because I've read up a bit on the history, I know this is not going to be a walk in the park, right? So I think we have that for it. But let's say, Matt, so, in the other room here, I've probably got 500 plus books on spy history, military history. I do a lot of war gaming on board games, right? So I love all that. So I see your website and I think, oh, is this for me? And let's say I email you. What kind of questions would you ask of me to make sure I'm a good fit for your expeditions?
So the endurance part is a big part of it, because I want to know you're going to get around there safe. So it's a bit like Pete's 1,000 miles journeys. Well, we've had people from all walks of life and all backgrounds and all age groups come on this. But, there's got to be an element of, drive there and gumption from you to succeed and want to do it. And I'd want to know that I was going to use the wrong terminology there. You're going to wrap if it got a wee bit cold and you're a wee bit wet and you're a wee bit hungry and you just kind of wrap. So, and it's hard to get that from somebody from an email. I'd probably want to phone you up and speak to you, depending on how punchy it was, and just get your experience, because you can ask someone's experience and you kind of got a rough idea if they're capable of doing something or not.
In terms of endurance, how would you judge that?
Yeah, so, it might sound really silly, but just going for something like a 10k run or a 6 mile runs, if you couldn't get around like a couple of miles running, just keeping your heart rate at a regular pace, or ultimately it boils down to safety. So, but before all our trips there'll be a short training phase, and if you're unsafe, then we can't take you on the hill. It's basics. So a rough idea of your fitness and your experience and what you've done in the past is normally a good insight.
My attitude to endurance changed as I got older, probably because I couldn't keep doing it as much. But when I was younger and doing all the endurance stuff and ultra marathons and all that nonsense that used to get involved in, I had this picture in my mind that was kind of really fit, supreme people that could do this stuff. Now, at the time, I was extremely fit myself. And I didn't really think people who weren't in that condition could do endurance events, but I have been proved completely wrong. Since we started doing the long expeditions, we've took a punt on several clients after we do video interviews with everybody pre to signing them up. I always was a strong believer in mental endurance more than physical endurance, but I thought you needed to have a pretty strong physical backup as well. And I've been proved wrong on that. If you've got the right mental endurance and you really want to get something done, it will happen. And I've seen the other opposite. I've took athletes on some of our trips and they haven't completed them. And these are people kind of are running 2.5-hour marathons, are running ultra marathons, and they haven't completed. And I've had a 65-year-old guy who, although I gave him a training program, he went to the pub and drank and then turned up 2-3 stone overweight, and he was a Yorkshire stubborn pain in the arse. And that's exactly the quality you needed, stubborn pain in the arse. And he finished 1,000 miles on foot across the Gobi Desert. And because he was stubborn.
Yeah, likewise. Sorry, Pete, to interrupt there, mate. I've had guys in their 70s, late 70s, come on it and do it. And all right, they're a wee bit slower, but they'll get round, and you know they're safe. And then I've had military guys who I thought, yeah, they'll be all over it, and they maybe didn't have the right kit or whatever. And you're like, that was a learning curve for me. He's a senior guy in the military. I'll take it for granted he knows what to bring, and you're like, seriously, that's really embarrassing. So kind of it swings and roundabouts. So we're just kind of you got to be bomb proof, and everyone's gets a kind of level playing field.
The hard thing with that, Shane, is, and I've found this hard with interviewing the clients, a lot of guests don't actually know their mental endurance. They have a good idea about their physical endurance. They have a pretty good idea about their physical endurance, whether it's poor, whether it's medium, whether it's good. But they don't really know their mental endurance because they haven't been put in a position that tests their mental endurance. Even the athletes, even the ultra things, their mental endurance is being trained because they've been training for years physically. And what happens with your brain then is it just adapts. It every day it gets a bit tougher on your training. It just adapts. So you've grown your mental endurance in that thing, but they become very regimented that the circumstances have to be right. When you take them out of that and throw them in a whole pile of nonsense, they get thrown out of that. So not many people understand their mental endurance because they've not been in a position to test it. And that is interesting to me to try and figure that out in individuals.
Yeah, and I ask it because you think of the customer's journey, and I wish I could remember how I came across your site now, Matt. I don't know if you shared it, Pete, or I read about it somewhere.
I'll put it on LinkedIn, I think, and I made a video. I made a wee video on put it on LinkedIn. That was it.
See, LinkedIn working there, got me hooked in. But I looked at the website, I'm like, this is great, but I'm just like, yeah, I'd never be able to do that because I've run half marathons and trained for all that, but I've never tested my mental endurance. I don't know how I would cope out in the cold or starving hungry. And I guess that's the question in my mind. But then there's the other part, like, I wouldn't mind testing myself.
Let's do it. You got to do it, man. Come and do it. Come and do
You're talking to a guy who gets scared because there's a bear running around our garden, or if I see a garden snake, I'm in bits, but...
Listen, there's one thing in life, there's one thing for certain, and that's you're going to check out. So let's have no regrets and let's have good experiences, good and bad. It's what you take away.
No one ever regrets doing stuff that's tough. People regret living their life crap. And because they get to the end of their life and it's just been okay. Well, I've got news for them. It's the only one they bloody got. And 8 billion years before they were born, they were nothing. And 8 billion years after them, they were nothing. So if they get to 70-year-old and they've done shit, well, that's their fault. So as a tour operator selling this stuff, we have to be conscious of what you just said, Jane. You looked at it and you're inspired by it, but you thought you wouldn't be able to do it. Now, that's a failing by us, by not understanding that customer persona. And we have to somehow get that message across that this isn't for heroes. This isn't for, and this is for everybody. If you have a bit of endurance and a bit of mental resilience, and you want to experience something different, and that's something I think about a lot when I'm communicating and when I'm trying to get marketing across. Is who is this customer? And what you said is the response from the vast majority of people. if I go back to what we were talking about at the beginning of this, the desire is still there. So the desire is huge, but then they think, but I'm not really capable of doing this. And that is an issue. It's an issue for them because we need to get them over that I'm not capable of doing this. Because I tell you, once somebody does something unusual in their life, nothing is difficult afterwards. Nothing. I'm scared of heights. I'm terrified of heights. Yeah, I jumped out of a plane when I was 18 years old. Nothing's ever been difficult since. And I'm still scared of heights now. I climb mountains and can hang off rock faces and stuff. But the minute I knew I could conquer fear by jumping out of a plane, nothing has been difficult since. Because it's just a mindset. It's a challenge. So if you get people to do something like this and they are concerned about it, once they do it, life becomes easier. Because you think, well, if I can do that, I can do anything.
I think that copy, you're right. It's how do you put that on the website? And I think once you start getting the reviews coming in, Matthew, asking people, particularly someone who's like myself, who, thought they couldn't do it and getting them to, write that in their testimonial. So I would then see that and go, oh, well, that person is also scared of heights or
no, 100%.
Not a great swimmer.
And because it's so new, that'll come with time. I mean, I can pull on previous stuff and get some testimonies on there. But no, that's a good point. That's good to know, Shane. What trip is you want to come on, mate? Out of interest, I'll sort you out.
Well, probably Crete.
Crete
looks fun.
Crete, all right, cool. Yeah, but
I told you Crete was the one. Crete's the one.
only because I lived in Scandinavia for 3 years and I live in Vermont where there's 9 months of snow. Yeah. So I'd rather go somewhere that's a bit warmer.
I could give you an hour's podcast on shepherds in Crete and how their diet and what they eat made them supreme athletes. Shepherds.
Wow.
Yes. That's how boring I am. Well, that's the sort of stuff I read. How boring's that? Learning about diets of shepherds in Crete.
We'll have to save that one for a beer at an event, hopefully whenever that will be. We're not too far away, Peter.
Hopefully Crete.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
No, I'd be up for it.
I've got a feeling, Shane, I'm going to be doing trips like going across Crete and climbing mountains of that long before I'm at a big event with 1,000 people in a hall.
Sad but true.
I think for the next year we're going to be outside more than we're inside.
Just to go back quickly, what you spoke about earlier, guys, you said about, how do you know that mental part? It ties in nicely with SOE because a lot of these people were bankers and joiners and, mechanics, and they had that. They didn't know until they actually went on the training. They were probably deselecting themselves, but it was the instructors that were saying, no, you're actually better than what you think. You don't know if good. And then they're like, all right. And then they believed in themselves, and then they pushed on through. Because even in that program, I was like, he's definitely going to get through. And then he didn't.
The arrogant one, right? The arrogant one. Yeah.
He's like, he's definitely getting through.
But the one who was the best was like the grandmother, right? Yeah. Remember the older woman? And again, like you were saying, Peter, you wouldn't think of her as being, an SOE agent. And there was that scene where she couldn't get in the water to swim the lock when she did it, which was powerful.
If people were put in the position that's unusual and it brings out things that they don't know is in them, you'd be amazed. But go back to the year Jordan won, Lawrence Arabia. Lawrence Arabia didn't start off to who he ended up being, wasn't who he was at the start. He was a disaster at the start. Nobody would give him the time of day. And he was just not respected at all at the beginning of that journey. It was only when he disappeared in the desert and then did what he did and come back out that he was launched to the level he is in history now. So you just never know what's hiding in some people, and they just sometimes need to be put in a position that brings that out of them. And the reality in normal life, most people are never put in that position, so it never comes out.
Matt, thank you for giving us an hour of your time today. I know you're busy. Pete, I know you're exceptionally busy. Really appreciate you sharing some wisdom with us. I hope to invite you. Maybe we'll do an in-person interview next year, Matt, after we've done Crete. After you've killed me.
Let's do it, mate. No, it's been great, mate. I've loved it. Pete, it's been great seeing you again, mate.
Yeah, good to catch up.
Thanks for listening to the Tourpreneur podcast. Be sure to visit tourpreneur.com to join the conversation and access the show notes, including links to the resources mentioned on today's episode. This is Tourpreneur.